know you would like to some kind of way extract something out of this bottle, all right, that's not there. It's not there. You all speculate and create things, and then you want people to respond to it. So you can ask the bottle, but don't ask me.
Hello, and welcome to all of you out there in podcast land. My name is Clint Childers, and once again, sitting really far away is the one and only Georgia Peach, Mitch Davis.
How's it going, guys? Yeah, we got another long-distance episode for you. That's 2 in a row.
Yeah, and hopefully everyone after this is going to be long distance.
Well, you know, it's kind of cool. I mean, I'm here, and you're out close to Hog's home base, you know, doing maybe a little scouting.
Oh, yeah, no, I was kidding about that. I don't want them to be long distance. Yeah, I am back down in Arkansas again, and you are back in Nashville. I say back, but you've always been there. Not always. You were in Georgia one time, and then now you're there.
Glory days. Yeah, but anyway, we'll hopefully be back in our little makeshift home studio next week. But for now, we are bringing you everything Week 5 from separate spots. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. You are listening to Ask the Bottle, an SEC fan cast. Write to us at askthebottlecast@gmail.com. Go on and follow us on Twitter at our brand new handle @bottlecast. Tweet us predictions to the game. Tweet us thoughts you have. Listen and subscribe to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Please, if you would, go leave us a rating on iTunes. We would absolutely love that. Leave us a review.
Yeah, honestly, 1 star, 2. If you can do 0, that's fine. Just anything is fine with me.
Even if you despise us, please take time out of your day and let us know. Mitch, I was just thinking the other day how funny it is that in our first year of doing this show, our teams are having pretty complete opposite seasons right now.
Yeah, thus far, you know, honestly, man, it's hard for me to believe that we're rapidly approaching halfway through the season already.
Isn't that crazy? It seems like just yesterday was week 1.
No kidding. I feel like I was just writing my previews, and now, yeah, we're in the thick of it. But it certainly has been a crazy first half. It'll be very interesting to see where both of our teams end up after the current stretch they're running through. We're hitting that point where it's SEC game after SEC game, and we all know anything can happen.
Yeah, and we're kind of getting a better picture of what the SEC is going to look like towards the end of the season, especially after this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're going to be mentioning, you know, rankings a lot more and records and stuff like that, and we're certainly seeing a few teams separate themselves from the pack slowly but surely.
Yeah, and last week we kind of talked about predicting the future a little bit. Our clairvoyance about Atlanta seems to be kind of coming true. From what we've seen so far, I don't think anybody expects anything short of Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm nervous to admit that I feel that way as well. It's certainly looking good for the Dogs, but yeah, I don't know. I personally, at this point, I think, with as little bias as I can muster, that is the best matchup that we could possibly see in Atlanta.
Yeah, and from a completely unbiased place, I agree with you. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, which means that the 2 most important games of the year in the SEC, it's really going to be Georgia and Florida, and then, of course, the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, seriously. You know, we had been talking about at the beginning of the season how, you know, who's going to step up, what teams might turn the SEC on its head, so to speak, and it looks like it's boiling down to just a good old-fashioned, you know, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Florida rivalry showdown pretty much.
Yeah, the cream is rising to the top, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about some football outside of the SEC real quick. Not a super eventful week outside of the conference, but we had a few good games. The Trojans of USC, sitting at number 5, rolled into Pullman, Washington, to play Washington State, who was number 16 at the time. USC loses to Washington State 30-27. And I think that we're looking at a very different quarterback in Sam Darnold that we saw last year. In this game, he went 15 of 29 for 164 yards and 1 pick. He scored a touchdown on the ground, which is new and interesting for him, but for a pocket passer, he needs to be a lot more efficient than that. The Cougs and the Trojans had pretty similar numbers on the ground, but it was Wazoo's passing game that won the day. 7 different players caught at least 3 passes for Washington State, and each had over 20 yards receiving, which, Mitch, that's the very definition of the spread.
Yeah, that is wild. That is some pure Mike Leach magic right there.
Mike Leach magic. Yeah, you're right about that. Please come to Arkansas. A late fourth quarter field goal would put the Cougars up 30-27 on USC, and with under 2 minutes left in the game, Wazoo's going to force that sack fumble. They're going to take over on downs to win the game. I got a few fun stats for you about this one.
Oh, please.
This is the first time Washington State has beaten USC in Pullman since 2002. And Luke Falk tied Marcus Mariota for second place in the Pac-12 for the most passing touchdowns thrown with 105.
That is an interesting stat.
He's kind of put him in the Heisman race a little bit, actually.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Washington State's going to rise to number 11 in the AP poll after this victory, and the Trojans are going to fall to number 14. There's still some time for them to salvage a top 10 season, but they're going to have to play super well for that to happen.
Now, I think that in itself is the storyline from this game. You can talk about on-the-field stuff, but the fact that the Trojans are now going from the top 5 to the top 15, and Wazoo maybe going to crack the top 10. I guess we'll see what happens, but it's pretty wild to see the Trojans fall that far. But, it makes sense.
If Washington State keeps airing the ball like they're airing it, they're going to score points. They're going to win some games. They could easily crack the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move it on over to the ACC. Number 2, Clemson rolls into Lane Stadium to play number 12, Virginia Tech, and takes it to them. They beat them 31-17. At the beginning of this game, Lane Stadium was rocking 66,000 strong, but that crowd soon quieted after the game started. Because in my humble opinion, Clemson is the best team in the country. They've already played in a hostile road environment a couple of times. They've played against ranked teams, and they've performed without fail. It seems like they almost thrive off of it, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. That whole Clemson, Alabama, who should be number 1 conversation, and then we talk strength of schedule. It's a tight one. I'm kind of on the fence about it personally. I'm not really sure which way I lean on that.
Yeah. It's gonna. Obviously, we're gonna have to see them play some more games. That Clemson-Florida State game is gonna be important, regardless of how good Florida State is. But back to this game, Virginia Tech really couldn't get out of their own way. They had 3 turnovers. Time of possession, first downs, and total yardage were all essentially equal, but the Hokies turning the ball over and giving up big plays for Clemson, it sealed their fate, really. Mm-hmm. Kelly Bryant for Clemson and Josh Jackson for Virginia Tech continue to be good dual-threat quarterbacks for their programs, but Bryant has just that toolbox of skill players to share the ball with. He's got Ray McLeod, he's got Hunter Renfrow, and Jackson and Virginia Tech, they just don't quite have that.
Yeah, and it's funny, just really quick, I want to just mention you were talking about turnovers, and it's funny that we see the same thing happen with Clemson as does with Alabama, where obviously I know they got tons of skill on defense, both teams, and can generate turnovers, but it's like we see teams come in that we think are going to be able to limit mistakes, that we think are going to be able to play a tight game, but I feel like they just sort of it's like these teams are so imposing that they almost generate turnovers by their very presence. You know what I mean?
Well, they smell blood.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the minute those nerves hit, those guys key into it, and just mistakes just start happening all over the place. We saw it happen with Vanderbilt, and definitely felt like it was somewhat similar in this game, even though Virginia Tech, kept it to a 2-score.
Well, we talked a little bit about the race for number 1 between Clemson and Alabama. Clemson's going to remain at that number 2 spot on the AP poll, but they actually got 17 first-place votes, which is their highest amount yet this week. I think if the Tigers continue to just destroy ranked opponents, their first-place votes are going to start to rack up. And Virginia Tech falls from number 12 to number 16 this week, which is fair, I think, considering Clemson was just the better team in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. That they should consider that, a pretty lucky break. That I feel like they can still easily salvage a solid bowl out of that.
All right, and much to the dismay of our listeners, let's talk some unranked Big Ten action real quick. There's just a few things about this game I really loved, and so I wanted to throw it in there. The Maryland Terps going to head to Minnesota to play the Golden Gophers and take them out 31-24. This was PJ versus DJ, Mitch.
Oh, yeah.
DJ Durkin's Terps, they're going to take down PJ Fleck's Golden Gophers at home. And this game featured the law firm of Bortenschlager and Funk. Third-string QB from Maryland, Max Bortenschlager, went 18 of 28 for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of which was to wide receiver Jake Funk.
I love that you brought in this game just for all these name.
I love
puns.
it.
It's perfect.
I love it. It was a back and forth game that ended with a 34-yard touchdown run by running back Ty Johnson from Maryland with under a minute left that iced the game. Neither team are ranked, but both now sit at 3-1, and the Terps started out Big Ten conference play with the win. You can't. It doesn't hurt.
No, I mean it's good to include teams like this because we're talking about a Maryland team that could absolutely crack the top 25 at some point if they can pull out a couple of big games.
When they hit 5 or 6 wins with one loss, I think it'll happen.
Yeah, definitely. As other teams start to fall out, I agree. They're one of those that are just right on the cusp.
And to quickly wrap up our nationwide segment, how about a little G5 action with everyone's favorite mid-major team, San Diego State?
Oh yeah, underrated even for 19. I'm gonna go ahead and say that hot take.
Oh, absolutely. They're on. They have the leading rusher in all of FBS.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep, the Northern Illinois Huskies roll into San Diego and lose 34-28. It's a pretty close one to the number 19 San Diego State Spartans. Or no, it's not Spartans, it's Aztecs. Excuse me. The score makes this game seem a lot closer than it was, but the Aztecs were in control pretty much the whole game. Running back Juwan Washington ran the opening kickback for a score. San Diego State racked up almost 200 yards of return yards in this game.
That is unreal.
Right? Rashad Penny remains the FBS leading rusher like we talked about with 107 yards on 25 carries in this game. And after this win, San Diego State's going to stay at number 19 on the AP poll. Given their competition week in and week out, I'd be surprised if they make it past the number 15 spot this year, but I'm loving watching them, man. They are electric.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those teams that maybe you see them, like you said, work it up to 15 or so. Maybe they get a harder schedule next year. We'll see if they can keep feeding Penny and get the job done.
All right, man. Well, that leads us into the conference where it just means more.
All right, yeah, let's just get right into it. I'm just going to start off right away. I'm just going to go Georgia, ranked 7 last week, going to Knoxville and shutting out the Vols 41-0. Clint, this was not the game I forecasted, not the game we talked about it being. Wow.
I just don't even really know what to say about this.
Yeah,
do you have any idea where Tennessee fell in recruiting class this year?
That's a really good question.
It was top 5, wasn't it?
It was certainly.
It was high
up there. There was a lot of talk about. It was in my previews actually, but anyway.
I just wanted to throw that out there and just to remind everyone this game was 41-0.
Yeah, Georgia pitching a complete shutout. We touched on it pretty heavily in the opening, but I mean, Georgia is starting to look like they're the team that can hang tough against Bama. This is the first shutout at home for the Vols since 1994. First time the Dogs have shut out the Vols in Knoxville since 1923. Since 2011, though, this game has been decided by one score every year. Until this Saturday, which I think is pretty insane. I was talking to my dad right before, and I was like, we're talking about how good Georgia looks, and I was like, yeah, honestly, none of that matters. It's going to be a close one. It's going to come down to the wire, just like last year. We'll see what happens, but I was dead wrong. I just want to go ahead and get into it. UT, the miscue started early. I mean, first pass, Tyreek McGee picks off Quentin Dormady.
Oh yeah, that first play, that first
right
interception
away
that he threw, I screamed at my TV. I don't have vested interest in any of these teams other than the fact that you and I are friends. Yeah, I screamed at my television.
Yeah,
I felt the pain. I felt the pain of every Vol on earth, and I was just like, Dormady, dude, what are you doing?
I had kind of I was just silent. I was just like mouth on the table, like, oh. So this is how it's going to be.
Yep.
But yeah, speaking of Dormady, ended up after that pick going 5 for 16, no touchdowns and 2 picks on the day. Not the kind of stat that's going to win you a football game. That pick, the Dogs didn't score right away. They set up a 38-yard field goal, but didn't seem to matter. They didn't really look back after that. Jake Fromm, want to talk about him for a minute. He went 7 for 15 for 84 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Not, mind-blowing numbers. Pretty pretty not great, actually. But he had some miscues early and, one or two missed throws. I know he had a receiver fall down, and I know he threw the pick. But he got in a couple grooves and, really just did enough to keep the chains moving. Tennessee secondary, shout out to them. They played tough. A lot of passes broken up. I think, honestly, the mistake was, and the thing that they didn't plan for, was they brought a ton of pressure early, but Fromm picked up on it and he started running the ball. He ended up with a rushing touchdown on the day.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that, actually.
Yeah, I mean
that was a heady play by him. That was a mature play.
No kidding. It reminded me a lot of Aaron Murray back in the day. But yeah, I was like shocked to see that, and it was interesting to see Fromm, maybe the passing game wasn't really working, so he kind of just takes it, just puts the team on his back and just runs it in. I mean, it was good to see that. But yeah, other than that, I mean, that kind of leads me into this game was all run game for the Dogs. Chubb coming out, going 16 for 109, averaging almost 7 yards a carry in this game. It was really good to see him, just kind of ball out in Knoxville after 2 years ago, that horrible injury.
Yeah, that is a great point you bring up. I hadn't thought about that. That is really awesome for him.
Yeah, I know he was rehabbing it last year. But to come into Neyland this year and play, I mean, that had to be kind of weird. But anyway, and Fromm actually had 2 rushing touchdowns. I messed up on that. But anyway, UGA ran for almost 300 yards on the day on 55 carries, averaging 5.5 yards per carry as a team. And I'm sorry, but in the SEC, that's going to win you games. That's just how it works.
Yeah, you talked about Fromm's stat line as being like just okay. He just had to be okay.
Yeah, seriously. And
he had to just get those short down and distances. He had to just throw those easy passes. He was not asked to do a lot. The run game was working very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it speaks for itself when you score 41 points and you only throw for 84 yards on the day. And that's 84 yards on just 7 receptions by 4 different receivers. So, yeah, pretty much run dominant. I have to say, on the other side of the ball, I have not seen John Kelly get brought down on the first, or honestly for him, the second hit this much all year. The Dogs really wrapping up, really cleaning up those tackles, which has been a huge problem in the past. The Vols were held to just 62 yards rushing on 29 carries. That's 2.1 per carry for the team, which is a huge problem because John Kelly basically is this team. And he led the team in rushing and receiving. However, as I'll get into in a moment, 44 of his 47 receiving yards were on that huge run that ended in a fumble. It just seemed like, when UT finally got stuff going, it just felt like these mistakes are reaching a new level of, how did that happen? So John Kelly runs for a 44-yard catch, fumbles early in the third quarter, just when they're starting to show some life. You have Callaway catch an underthrown ball and then just hit the turf so hard that he looked bad. That was a frightening injury. He could barely get off the field. You got the low punt that hit junior linebacker Dondre Walker in the face. A tip ball interception. I mean, in a game that they were already down in, Tennessee certainly did not catch any breaks in this one.
Yeah, I think. How many times did we text a butt fumble back and forth?
I forgot about that. Yeah, no kidding. That was like the icing on the cake, honestly, for the Vols. It was a rough day. As somebody who has a lot of family in Knoxville and any other day of the year is a Vols fan, it was rough to see a shutout. I mean, it's just not what I was expecting. Again, I also want to add, I did not expect to see both teams' backup quarterbacks for extremely different reasons. Jacob Eason coming in to basically just be a handoff machine, and then Jarrett Guarantano getting a shot. He went 6 for 7 for 16 yards. I don't really know what to do with that stat. But
yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter.
No, I mean,
really?
I was thinking
it's good. It's good to get him some snaps, but I don't know how good you feel about that as a Vols fan.
I've just never seen 6 for 7 You're like, wow, efficient, and then 16 yards. Anyway, not a great day for Peyton to be in the house. I'm going to go ahead and say, regardless of what happens the rest of the season, I think Butch is done. I think this is just good because the Vols have plenty of time to figure out who they want to replace him with. I know they could, they host the Gamecocks in Knoxville next week. I'm going to go ahead and say the Gamecocks win this one by a score, 17-10, after losing a close one to A&M, which they were very much in for the better part of the game.
Real quick,
please.
I don't think Tennessee's playing South Carolina next week because Arkansas is playing South Carolina next week.
Oh my gosh, you're totally right.
Yeah, I think. Do they have a bye week this week?
Oh, wow. Yes, they do. Tennessee.
Yeah.
So,
boy,
redirect.
those schedules
Tennessee
mess you up.
Getting a much needed bye this week.
I was gonna say. Are we both playing South Carolina this week?
Yeah. So South Carolina is they're playing Arkansas at home and they're playing Tennessee in Knoxville at the same time.
They're playing
Don't
a
ask
doubleheader.
me.
They're playing a doubleheader.
Yeah. What's going to happen is nervous Will Muschamp is going to show up in, I guess, at home, and then angry Will Muschamp is going to show up in Knoxville, and we'll see which one coaches a better team. But,
yeah.
Anyway, so scratch that. Tennessee getting a much-needed bye week before they play the Gamecocks.
Do you think I have a question for you real
please.
quick. Do you think they fire Butch Jones during the bye week?
That would surprise me.
You think they'll hang on to him for the rest of the season?
I certainly think Vols fans maybe would appreciate that. I just don't see what that does for the team. I don't see where you go other than down from there.
Yeah, they already lack leadership, like you talked about. And,
exactly.
And I agree with you. I think firing Butch Jones midseason, especially when it's about to be week 6, it's just going to pull out whatever stops you have left.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. But, so moving over to Georgia, they come to Nashville this week to play Vandy. This is another kind of one of those games that I think doesn't get enough credit for being a little bit back and forth. Vandy has to be angry at this point, and I see them pulling out all the stops in this game. That being said, as I said for the Tennessee game, if this Georgia team is who they look like they are, they should win this game by multiple scores. I'm going to say 31-10. If they have any chance to beat Bama, they need to roll in this game.
Yeah, I think 31-10 is pretty conservative.
Yeah, that's.
I would have UGA scoring a lot more points in this game.
I certainly hope so. That would be, that would make more sense. I definitely went a little conservative on it. But we'll see. We'll see if they can roll in Nashville.
All right, man. Well, let's head it over to the West. I'm going to go ahead and start off my West slate of games with whatever it was LSU put on the field this past week.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
That one's going to linger for a while.
Boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Originally, I really wanted to just roast LSU for this one. Like, I wanted to just tear into them. But, I get it. Look, I get it. Arkansas lost to Toledo early a couple years back, and it sucked really, really bad. So I totally understand. It's rough what LSU's going through right now. All I have to say is, given the state of the program, it was really nice of them to invite Troy to homecoming. Did you see that tweet?
No, I didn't see that.
Troy Athletics tweeted out, "Thanks for inviting us to homecoming at
That's
LSU.
Incredible.
We had a great time." No. But in all seriousness, it's a bitter pill for the Bio Bengals to swallow. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we kind of put out an impromptu Twitter poll to our followers about coaching decisions that we'll kind of get to a little bit later. But some things about this game real quick. LSU hasn't lost at home to a non-conference team in 17 years. This is a career low for Ed Orgeron, and a new low for LSU. The CEO style of coaching seems to be coming back to haunt Edo. His post-game comments seem to say that he and Matt Canada aren't really seeing eye to eye right now.
That's not good.
No, it's not. This LSU offense was without its bread and butter, the run game. No touchdowns on the ground for LSU and just 162 yards. Troy's defense held Darrell Williams to just 69 rushing yards. LSU really needs Darius Geis back right now.
Yeah, that's no joke.
The Tigers' defense showed up to play in Death Valley and just got smacked in the mouth. Troy was up they're up 17-0 midway through the third, and LSU gave up 206 yards in all three of Troy's touchdowns on the ground. Troy running back Jordan Chun was able to run free with 191 yards on 30 carries, and the secondary didn't play great either. 157 yards for Troy through the air. Troy quarterback Brandon Silvers went 16 of 28, really not that great, but it was just enough to put Troy in the red zone where they could score on their ground game. And all things considered, just from what I've done researching this game just screams coaching to me. I just can't imagine that LSU didn't have the talent. I mean, not with where they've landed in recruiting the past couple of years. You don't get out talented if you're LSU. You don't get outplayed in talent by a Sun Belt team. You just don't.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I completely agree with you. I think it absolutely comes down to coaching. I think if we're talking just organization wide, I honestly think that after a shaky start, a loss like this is going to serve LSU for the better in the long run. I think they thought they sort of had the pieces together to move on from less this year, and I just think that that's all completely being seen through at this point. I think this loss really puts things into perspective, and I think it's something that the Tigers and the Tigers fans are not going to forget for a long time, and I'm sure it's going to have an impact going forward.
Absolutely. And there just doesn't seem to be any leadership on this team. The seniors don't really seem to be stepping up. There's no natural leadership evolving through practice or through meetings or anything. And Ed Orgeron doesn't really seem to be doing anything to lead this team either.
Yeah, which is crazy because, the selling point on him was he was a coach that the players really loved, is what I thought. But, yeah, I agree. It's just, I think, and especially coming from a guy like Les, who we're talking about, a lot of discipline, it's just weird. It's just like watching a different team, man.
Well, Mitch, I guess that's why you don't hire a coach for his accent. Let's get to our Twitter poll. We filled out an impromptu Twitter poll. I asked our followers, in light of today's games, which was on Saturday, where we had the Tennessee shutout and the LSU loss to a Sun Belt team, I said, which coach is most likely to get the boot first? And I offered LSU's Ed Orgeron or Tennessee's Butch Jones. With 67% of the votes cast, we have LSU's Ed Orgeron. The listeners think he is going to be gone first, Mitch.
Wow. It's funny. We have two guys that are on hot seats for totally different parts of their career. I think Butch is the more sure bet to get fired, but I could definitely see Ed going first. That makes sense.
Oh yeah. Well, next week LSU's got to put this one in the rear view because they're headed down to Gainesville.
Yeah, this is gonna be a big game. I don't even care what's going on. This game is huge.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this one. This seems like one of those games where, regardless of what's happening in a program, it just means a lot to the players. Mm-hmm. It's a big rivalry, I feel like, especially after all the thing with the cancellation last year and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
It seems like a big one. Florida is still ranked number 21 as of this week, but how deserving they are of that rank, I'm skeptical of. They have some playmakers on offense, and the Swamp is kind of like a player in itself, really, given if it's packed, which I'm sure it will be packed out for this one.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
I just don't think LSU has this one in the bag. They're going through hell right now. Spirits are down. Coaching is bad. I think the Tigers drop it to the Gators 27-17 next week.
All right. I could see that. I'm in agreement with you, and I'll offer up my – actually, yeah, why don't we get right over to Florida? Actually, East.
Yeah, let's throw it over there, man.
Florida handily beating Vanderbilt after it's all said and done, 38-24 in the Swamp. All right. So I just want to lay out a timeline for you. So you're Florida.
Okay. Wait.
One,
do I have to be Florida?
in this, do you want to be Florida or do you want to be McElwain specifically?
Oh, God, I'll be Florida.
God. Oh man, the bias on this episode is showing.
Oh no.
No, I have plenty of good things to say about this team. But anyway, let me just give you a timeline. Week 1, you bench Felipe Franks for Malik Zaire against Michigan, and you get beat bad. Second game, canceled. Third game, you give Franks the full start against UT in a huge, epic, momentum-building Week 3 win. Week 4, you bench Franks in the second half against Kentucky for former starter Luke Del Rio, who throws a pick on his first drive but still manages the Gators to an extremely close win at Kentucky. Now you start Del Rio, who went 7 for 11 for 64 yards against Vandy. He goes down, and he's out for the year, collarbone injury, and now you're starting Franks all year. How did that sequence of events happen?
I think it all started down to not recruiting a quarterback.
This has been the weirdest back and forth I've seen in a while. And we've talked about quarterbacks at Florida since Tebow, but this is, to me, is as weird as it's ever gotten.
You're absolutely right. This is like the ultimate Twilight Zone of the Florida quarterback history.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, barring a Zaire appearance, who knows, that might happen. But Franks goes 10 for 14 for 185 yards in this game and beats Vandy. I mean, I've been reading and hearing some stuff about, Florida losing Del Rio is rough. They need that veteran presence. But, I mean, honestly, I think either way, I think they're better off having to be forced to stick with one guy.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about it week in, week out. I don't know how many times we can have this conversation together.
Yeah.
Start a guy. Okay,
Seriously.
Look, Del Rio gets hurt. Like, it's one thing. But now you have the opportunity to just start. He's going to play Zaire again, isn't he? Just play
That's what
Franks.
I'm saying. That's what exactly what I'm saying.
Just play Franks. Let him get – dude, if you don't let him get better, he's not going to get better.
Well, and that's the thing in this game. I mean, he went, like I said, 10 for 14, 185 yards against Vandy, a defense that personally I think has some good talent. Yeah, I mean, just that would be enough for me. Regardless, if we're talking quarterbacks, I did want to say, even though Vandy lost this game, even though they got shellacked against Alabama at home, Kyle Shermer's good. He threw 40 passes in this game. He only went 18 for 20, still mustered 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's 3 touchdowns to 3 different receivers. I've been watching him a lot. We saw him in person even. And the dude, once he gets going, he's so hard to stop. And I feel like, Bama clearly shut him down early, and that's why they ended up shutting him out. But I just think that this team can't survive in the SEC because they just can't get the run game going. I mean, we talk about all these great teams. We talk about Alabama. We talk about Auburn with Petway. We talk about Georgia's rushing attack. This team, he can air it out all he wants, but if Ralph Webb's going 11 for 29, averaging 2.5 yards a carry against a good defense, albeit, you're just not going to win games. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen in the SEC.
Yeah, I wonder how much of moving Webb out to wide receiver was maybe trying to get the ball in a skill player's hands, due to a lack of an offensive line.
Run through the air a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, maybe those quick screens out, those quick pitches. They don't have much of an offensive line. Obviously, I think that's why Webb is having problems. It's not like he lacks experience or anything.
That's what. Yeah, he's a great player. He's a vet.
So
he doesn't fumble.
Maybe that's why they're trying to, get him in the passing game a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And just trying to make it happen any way they can. But I was watching this game and we keep talking about Vandy and we keep seeing them lose these games and I think that's why. But whether they win games or not, I still think Shermer is one of the better pocket passers in the SEC. I think he's on a short list in the country. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets some playing time in the NFL before it's all said and done. Anyway, speaking of run games, Florida not really missing Jordan Scarlett too much, I'm going to go ahead and say, with Lamical Pirine and Malik Davis absolutely running like a couple of men possessed in this game.
LaMichael.
LaMichael, excuse me. I don't know why I just love saying Lamical.
I like it better too.
I said it wrong the first time I was watching him on TV, and I was like, I like Lamical, but
it's
LaMichael.
Lamical.
I'm sorry, LaMichael. Shout out to his older brother, Samaje, who is playing for the Redskins right now. Anyway, these guys just tore it up. P. Ryan went 15 for 58, averaging about 4 yards a carry, scored 3 touchdowns. Malik Davis, though, 17 for 124, averaging 7.3 yards per carry and 2 TDs. I mean, that's 5 rushing touchdowns. More to the point I just made about how important it is to establish the run game early and keep riding it in this conference. Gators look good on the ground, man. I mean, I didn't expect that after the Scarlet.
Yeah,
suspension.
I mean, did you hear what sentence you just said?
What?
The Gators looked good on the ground. When's the last time that happened?
Yeah, it's really wild. But seriously, I mean, these guys are talented, and they have the passing to back it up. Franks, we say what we say, but dude has a cannon. He hit Tyree Cleveland for a 49-yarder. Beware the deep ball. I'm definitely looking at that as a factor in the Georgia game. 10 different receivers in this game, with 4 of them catching 2 or fewer balls, but having more than 20 yards per reception. That's crazy. We're talking about the run game, but, I mean, if you're slinging it like that, maybe Vanderbilt just really isn't what we cracked him up to be. But that's an impressive stat, in my opinion. Tyree Cleveland leading this team with 2 receptions for 67 yards. But, I swear I'm talking all these numbers. And Florida had some awesome plays, and, they're definitely breaking some big plays. But I swear, man, they catch – it's like Tennessee's inverse. They catch every single break. I mean, they had a deep ball that was tipped by Vandy's Ryan White right into the hands of Freddie Swain, who apparently is just unguardable because he was left totally wide open against Kentucky. In this game, he catches a tip ball that went like 15 yards after it hit the guy's hand. I don't know. Florida just kind of took control once they were up 31-17. But, Vandy stayed in it. Shermer, like I said, his skill just kind of always keeping them in it a little bit. I don't know. The Doors spread the ball around. They had 8 receivers, catch 18 receptions for 264 yards. They had 3 touchdowns through the air. C.J. Duncan leading the team with 5 catches for 75 yards. Honestly, this game was pretty fun to watch, which isn't really what I expected. It was very offensive all game long. I think Florida, honestly, at the end of this one, seemed like they're kind of finding their rhythm. Not a lot of mistakes. Both teams really, not really allowing a ton of sacks, no lost fumbles, no missed field goals. Florida was just able to control this game on the ground, and I'll say that over and over again. I think Vandy going to Nashville next week, it should be a Georgia blowout if Georgia is what they seem. And I had written this down, and then I heard you say what you had to say, and I was just thinking, wouldn't it be hilarious after all this Florida talk, after all these crazy epic wins, if LSU just came out and beat them? I mean, wouldn't that just be like the icing on the cake as far as the SEC goes?
Oh, that would make our job each week a little more difficult.
It certainly would.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and call the upset. I'm saying 27-24 Tigers.
I love that we keep disagreeing on these games.
We really should round up at the end of the year who got closest and maybe see what our biggest disagreements were and how they panned out. But yeah, man,
maybe the loser has to do something embarrassing on camera and maybe put it on YouTube.
Hey, yeah, why not? Why not? Do a whole episode in a chicken suit or something.
Oh God.
But yeah, that's what I'm calling. So yeah, if you want to swing it back to the West.
All right, will do. Going to go ahead and talk about the Auburn Tigers and the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Auburn looks good.
Auburn looks very good, and we get it. Like, we get it. You're good. Honestly. Like, what is it with the Alabama teams, man? Is 40 points not enough for you gluttons? Like, really?
I just want to talk to whoever had the final say on Mississippi State's schedule, because that's a bummer.
That is a bummer.
I mean, playing 2 teams right when they kind of hit their stride, for a team that, started hot, got a feel for those Bulldogs. But, I mean, this was a pretty landslide win.
Oh, by the way, we should probably talk about the score. Number 13 Auburn beats number 24 Mississippi State 49-10. It was really not even close.
Yeah, they're out of the top 25 now.
Yeah, the Bulldogs walked into a death machine in Jordan-Hare, and they paid for it dearly. It was packed out. It was loud. It's a hard environment for even the best teams to compete in, and this was no different. Attendance was well over 86,000 people. And when your offense relies a lot on reads and switching things up at the line of scrimmage, depending on what the front seven shows, I mean, you're going to struggle if you can't hear the cadence.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Fitzgerald struggle at between the hedges, and I feel like this was probably even louder.
Oh, yeah. The Tigers outgained the Bulldogs 511 to 351 yards on offense. 351 yards of offense for Mississippi State isn't atrocious or anything, but considering they were 7 of 21 on third down and 2 of 6 on fourth down and only scored 10 points, I mean, Dan Mullen just could not figure out how to score on this Auburn defense.
He was mad.
Yeah, I said last week. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I said last week this game was hinged on Auburn being able to contain Fitzgerald, and they did just that.
Yeah, I honestly was surprised that Grantham's defense allowed that many yards and that many points. But, I mean, again, I think Auburn's finding their form.
Yeah, the Tigers' defense held Fitzgerald to 13 of 33 passing and just 56 yards on the ground. The Bulldogs were only allowed 194 yards rushing. Hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
You remember what Jarrett Stidham looked like when he played in the Big 12 for Baylor?
Yes, I do.
He's back.
Yeah.
13 of 16 for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns, not a pick.
Woo. Again, against this defense, that surprises me.
It is. Over the past 2 games, Stidham has 8 passes of 40 yards or more.
Deep ball.
Yeah, Kerryon Johnson was the man to give the ball to in the running game for Auburn. 13 carries for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. Todd Grantham's defense on Mississippi State just absolutely got shredded. They couldn't play zone. They couldn't keep up in man-to-man situations. The front seven couldn't get to Stidham at all, just 2 sacks. And, I mean, overall, it's still difficult to tell where this Mississippi State team sits. Obviously, after this week, their win against LSU doesn't look nearly as impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
And the only other conference teams they played are Georgia and Auburn, who are both easily the second and third best teams in the SEC.
Yeah, again, that's a rough.
So the Bulldogs still have a chance to finish third in the West, really, if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're definitely going to have to. But I think that if these 2 games were spread out, they maybe one in the first third of the season, the other one in the last third of the season. I think I completely agree. I think this team will be able to finish somewhere like that. I still think they can. It just looks bad right now.
It does look bad for them, yeah. Well, luckily for them, they have a chance to catch their breath this week as they have a bye. Hopefully they can kind of figure some things out on defense, namely their secondary difficulties in the past couple of weeks. We talked about Todd Grantham. He did great things at Georgia. He's doing really great things at Mississippi State, but they just got they got the ball just aired out on them, man. They couldn't do anything in the past game. So hopefully they can air that, or they can tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, and to see the run game come up strong, too, with Petway banged up, I mean, yeah, seriously. Although I will say, shout out to Malzahn. It seems like when he finds talent, he just knows how to exploit it in just crazy ways. I mean, those deep balls, they're playing fearless right now.
Absolutely. Week 7, Mississippi State stays in Starkville to play BYU. We've already seen BYU get beat by LSU, so I'm thinking that the Mississippi State Bulldogs should have an all right time, but the Cougars have weapons. They have an experienced QB in Tanner Mangum. They have an experienced offense. We know they can score points, but like I said, I think the Bulldogs will come away with this one, but it'll all depend on how rested and ready they can be after the bye week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be much needed as well.
For Auburn, they have the pleasure of staying on the plains to face Ole Miss next week. And, I just feel for Matt Luke and the Rebels having to play both Alabama and Auburn back-to-back weeks on the road.
I was going to say, this game is going to be interesting because Ole Miss is going to be worn out, and maybe Auburn looks a little puffed up and a little better than they are in this game. But regardless, I still think it's a good way to see in real time just how they stand up to Alabama in terms of how many points they can put up in this game.
Yeah, I think they're going to do a pretty good job. I think they're going to feed on Ole Miss next week. I don't even think it's going to be close, Mitch. I think Auburn wins 40-10.
Yeah, I think that's, it's kind of like a Georgia scenario. I think that's probably what should happen if Auburn is expecting to compete.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is just going to be done stitching their mangled corpse back together for it to all be dismembered once again.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, that was really morbid. Let's go back to the East.
Dark.
I'm sorry. Let's go back to the East.
All right, well, keeping it dark, I guess, with the game the Wildcats put up, they barely beat Eastern Michigan 24-20. I kind of called this one. This was going to be the hangover game we predicted after the loss to Florida. Steven Johnson, who was a little banged up in this game after it was all said and done, he was solid stat-wise. He went 18 for 27, 2 touchdowns, but he got sacked 5 times. Didn't rush at all. He ended up, because of the sacks, with negative 34 yards on the ground on the day. He lost 1 of 2 fumbles. His offensive line I guess they just slept through the game. I mean, Benny Snell was okay on the ground. They kind of fed him 21 carries for 75 yards. Garrett Johnson leading the receiving corps with 8 receptions, but for just 61 yards. It just, this game was kind of, again, we've seen this before with Tennessee against UMass, and, it's just these games where it's just this team gets beat so bad, and then they show up next week, in such bad fashion. I mean, UK misses 2 out of 3 field goals. This kind of weirdly, unexpectedly turned into like a poor man's shootout. It was tied at 14 at the half after 4 straight passing touchdowns. And then, Kentucky went up by 2 scores to make it 24-10. And, they were able to hold off Eastern Michigan with a pick inside the 25 and then a pick on the final drive to end the game. I want to go ahead and just get into next week when Kentucky, I believe, now you're going to have me checking because I hope I didn't miss any buys. They're going to be facing Missouri at home next week, which is just all kinds of interesting given the state of these programs right now. I'm going to go ahead and say that, so Mizzou's 1-3. I think this is going to be a legitimate shootout, personally. I think these teams, I know Mizzou's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder. Probably better, honestly, for them that this game's not at home. Mizzou's yet to win an SEC game. We'll see if they can pull off the upset, if you'd call it an upset. But I'm still going with Kentucky in this one. I think they got it by 1 score, 27-20.
Yeah, I know deep down, Mitch, in my heart of hearts, that Kentucky's a good football team.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I just need them to put together a complete game. I keep waiting for it to happen. This Eastern Michigan game, I can't call a complete game. They've gotten wins, but I can't say they've played a complete game, like you said. I mean, tied 14-14 at the half, that's not going to do it.
No.
I need to see them play a complete football game. I know they can do it. I've seen them do it. I've seen evidence of it. They need to put it all together at the same time. And I'm still waiting on that. I really like this team. I pull for them every single week.
I agree. And both sides of the ball. I think there's a lot of talent.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at right now, but they need to put it together because I really want to see them have success.
Yeah, we almost saw a complete game last week against Florida, and I think that just, I'm sure they came away demoralized, angry, and tired, and we'll see if they can rebound, but I still think that there's a season to be salvaged here for Kentucky. I agree with you. I hope we see it as well. Mizzou, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that either.
All righty.
All right, let's take it back to the West. Let's move from one blowout to another one. Alabama doesn't really seem to be interested in anyone's feelings right now, Mitch.
That's a fact.
Bunch of bullies, if you ask me. Hey, why don't y'all consider not scoring so many points? Like, would it kill you to take a knee around the middle of the third?
Honestly, though, man, that's impressive. 66-3 in an SEC game. I know Ole Miss has tons of problems and aren't really, they don't have a postseason, but dang, 66-3. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, really. I got a little stat for you that blew my mind when I saw it, and I hope it blows everyone else's minds too. Alabama's played 5 football games this year. They've won them all. They've outscored their opponents 231-43. I'll say it one more time. 231 points to 43 points.
That is wild. I don't even know what to respond with. Exactly.
I don't know what to say either. I'm just going to lay out some quick stat comparisons real quick, and I think they'll speak for themselves regarding this game. Alabama had 613 total yards. Ole Miss had 253.
Whoa.
Alabama had 26 first downs. Ole Miss had 11. Ole Miss had 2 turnovers, and Alabama had none. I can't even really talk about how well the Rebels did in this game because they didn't really do anything.
I know, right? I was going to say, you know, we always try and kind of give each team their minutes, but this was just all of Alabama. And by the way, I just want to point out that that's Alabama averaging on the season in 5 games 46 points a game.
Yeah, it's video game numbers. It's like you're playing NCAA.
It really is, against like your younger brother or your cousin that's like 5 years old.
Yeah. Shea Patterson threw mostly incompletions and 2 interceptions. Didn't really ever approach the end zone.
Poor guy.
On the ground, the Rebels choked. Oh my god.
Oh no.
I have the word clocked written down, but I read it as choked.
I just read it.
On the ground, the Rebels clocked in 88. They did choke, but they also clocked in 88 yards of offense. Even with Jordan Wilkins running for 101, Patterson was negative 16 yards on 8 carries.
That's.
Their defense gave up, like I said, 613 yards and 66 points to Alabama. They were just outclassed, outcoached, and outmatched. Plain and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, next week Ole Miss has to play Auburn, and has to. I think they wouldn't if they could, and I'm genuinely concerned for the well-being of not only the Ole Miss football team but for everyone in Oxford. If you have a heart condition or need to avoid stress, I'd probably just avoid the TV next week if you're an Ole Miss fan. Auburn's going to slice the Landshark defense. Like I said, 40-10.
All right.
I actually tweeted this out on the show account. But after beating Ole Miss this week, Nick Saban's 4 next coaching opponents are Kevin Sumlin, Brett Bielema, Butch Jones, and Ed Orgeron.
So it's like the hot seat tour starring Nick Saban.
He could get all 4 of them fired. I mean they're getting themselves fired. But
honestly, if I'm in the head office of any of those programs, I'm just maybe gonna just try and ignore that game. I'm sure it's going to be very tempting to, hit the big red button and send the coach down after that game. But if it's me, I'm just going to be like, you know what? This is going to be a rough one, and I just shouldn't take it out on the coach.
Yeah. Just take it in stride.
Yep.
Alabama will have absolutely no problem taking care of A&M next week. I don't care that it's at Kyle Field. I don't care. I'm taking the Tide big, 42-20 over the Aggies. Even with A&M's offensive weapons, they're just not going to be able to handle the defense.
Honestly, though, man, that's still probably the most, other than maybe Florida State, kind of a team would have put up a fight against Bama this year so far. So I think that's a very accurate prediction that gives the Aggies the credit that they deserve.
Yeah, I think they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit.
I don't think they're going. I don't think this game. He's solid.
I agree with you. I'd watch Christian Kirk.
Yeah,
I don't think. And you know what? It's so funny because really the weakness of Alabama in the past few years has been special teams. We know Christian Kirk can really run some kicks back. That might be where A&M can attack if they can attack anywhere. It might be on special teams. Like we said, they've got weapons, but. They're not going to be able to pull it off, but they're going to put up a fight.
Yeah, I think that's a good. And all right, well, speaking of that, I'll go ahead and get into the last East game, which was A&M against South Carolina. Entertaining game, I want to say. Another close one for South Carolina, who now falls to 3-2, 1-2 in SEC play, while A&M improves to 4-1 and is undefeated in SEC play, 2-0. Speaking of Christian Kirk. So he went 4 for 13 in this game and no big returns, and he fumbled and lost a fumble on the second punt of the game.
Man, you're really going to undermine me like that right now,
You
Mitch?
know, I was thinking about. I was like, he has no idea about to come in here and be like. That's why I said Ford instead of Kirk, because he ended up being the stud in this game. But I mean, I was pretty. Shouts out to the Gamecocks for just shutting Christian Kirk down.
Yeah, that definitely needs to be attributed to that defense and that
I
special
completely
teams
agree.
play.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and honestly, he's one of those guys I would not expect to muff a punt, but that can certainly be a factor in your momentum. But really, though, it didn't even matter because South Carolina missed another field goal. Parker White is now 2 for 7 on the year. So, honestly, he might as well fumble because they're missing field goals left and right.
Well, I wanna say real quick. I know we're not talking about this game yet, but Arkansas plays South Carolina next week. You said that they're having field goal troubles. Arkansas is the only team in FBS that has yet to make a field goal.
That was my underhand lob at giving you a shot to undermine me right back because, yeah, that's unbelievable.
We'll see who has the worst kicking game next week, Mitch.
It's going to be a close race.
Don't try to out-bag kick Arkansas. You'll lose.
I'd certainly will. Although I am going to be – that's probably going to be one of the main things I'm going to be watching when I'm watching that game. Anyway, just really quick, want to address a scary, strange injury on a punt to South Carolina wide receiver Terry Guger. It was really weird. It was like he got blocked. He was tangled up with a guy. Something was going on, and he just fell awkwardly. Ended up having to have his pads, all of his stuff cut off. His jersey he was taken out on a stretcher. I'm told he's fine. He tweeted a pretty encouraging message from the hospital, but just thoughts and prayers to him. That was really frightening to see. But unfortunately, that kind of stuff just happens from time to time. I'm glad to hear he's okay. Anyway, back into the game. A&M, Keith Ford had a day, man. Only 12 carries, but racked up 70 yards for 5.8 per carry with 2 touchdowns. I just want to say, that doesn't really do him justice. The dude literally carried the entire pile, both teams, into the end zone to tie the game in the fourth. He was hit on the 5-yard line. I mean, he's a monster. I'm really excited to see what kind of game he puts together next week against Bama. I think they're going to have to stop him if they want that score that you had predicted to be true. I think they very well could, knowing Bama, but still. Anyway, Kellen Mond also led the team in rushing, though, with 16 carries for 95 yards. Super mobile in this game. Definitely a big part of the difference. He also went 19 for 27 for 159 yards to the air. And dude he's talented. He's got an all-around skill set that's really impressing me when he settles down.
That's the best stat line he's had yet this year.
Yeah, I know.
This is the best he's looked in a game. He doesn't normally play this well. But he really did play well in this game. I have to give credit where it's due.
Absolutely. I mean, I was certainly a bit surprised just to see him go up against a solid defense and really put together a complete, solid game. Speaking of GOAT quarterbacks, Jake Bentley, 17 for 30 for 2 touchdowns in this game. To me, he's another just pure passer in the SEC that is really solid. You could compare him to Shermer if you want, but the difference is the dude can scramble. He had a beautiful 45-yard touchdown pass to freshman wide receiver Shi Smith, who went 3 for 86 himself on the day. I mean, he can really sling it under pressure. It almost seems like he thrives on pressure. It was good to see some guys step up with Debo still out. Bentley hit just 5 receivers on the day for 156 yards. Hayden Hurst still just a monster, going 6 for 76. The big guy is definitely the chain mover of this offense, and I think was a big part of them staying in it. As far as the South Carolina ground game goes, running back Tyson Williams has all but snatched the starting job from fellow sophomore Rico Dowdle, who went 2 for -4 yards on the day. Tyson going 14 for 73, averaging 5.2 yards a carry. Honestly, though, how about the Aggie defense? stepping up. I mean, yeah, they allowed 256 in the air, but they had 7 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. I mean,
That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's like Miles who?
Yeah,
but,
exactly. That's a lot. That screams to me. That screams bad O-line.
I completely agree. I was going to say, 7 sacks and double-digit tackles for loss in an SEC game is an anomaly, without a doubt. And, I mean, like I said, it almost seems like Bentley, thrives on scrambling, but he had to do it a lot. And definitely not going to win games when your quarterback's going down 7 times. I don't care who you are. Again, bottom line, if you can establish the run game in these SEC games, you're going to pull them out. I mean, guys like Sherman Bentley are great players, like I'm saying, but, unless you got a crazy good defense or a really rock-solid standout couple of running backs, then you're just going to fall short in these close ones. And plus, going against a more mobile quarterback only bolstered A&M's run game as well. I do agree that we saw a pretty exceptional performance on Mon's part, which could arguably ultimately have been the difference. If I'm South Carolina in this game, I might have run the ball a little bit more. I mean, it was pretty close.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts for my next game about. Well, no. I was just going to say, whenever we switch back over to the West for my last game, I have a few thoughts on South Carolina's run game. But But yeah, continue.
Yeah. This was a 1-score game almost all the way through. South Carolina kept the lead for a very good bit of it. But, again, I think we can talk about Mond and we can talk about Ford. I think Ford wearing down the defense did just as much and, literally forcing the ball into the end zone and helping them manage the clock is the difference in this game against two teams that going in, I really thought either one could have won it. I tell you what, it's a very different West picture right now if A&M hadn't dropped that first game. I'm not even going to say West picture because they're undefeated in the SEC, but just in general, like rankings-wise, if they hadn't dropped that game to UCLA, I think people would be pretty impressed with A&M right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's definitely true. And you've been preaching the run game all episode long, and you're right about that. You're right about the run game in the SEC. You're right about A&M dropping that game to UCLA. So. Yeah.
It looks like I have a pretty similar prediction, I believe. Just one. What was yours? 42-20 against Bama for this team?
I have Bama scoring one more touchdown than you.
Yeah, so I'm calling 35-20 Bama. I feel the same way. I'm definitely thinking they take an L against Bama in College Station, but I expect them to put up points. And I think this game delivers just enough confidence for this team to feel like they can go in and give them a fight. Looks like I got it right on this one, which is probably more surprising than anything. But South Carolina hosting the Razorbacks next week. My prediction says Bentley edges out Austin Allen to make it 21-17 Gamecocks. I'm calling a close one in this one. I think Arkansas's. I don't know. These teams feel like they're going to have similar games to me, but even though they look different.
How dare you? How dare you be so correct? No, let's talk about the Hogs.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Last week they played New Mexico State at home. They beat them 42-24. Arkansas needed this win to get to 500 on the season, and they were able to make it happen, but there's still huge issues looming for this team now that they're moving into the SEC stretch. The offense was able to go in and get a rhythm going early, which is always good. Allen was 19 of 26 for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns, over 10 yards of completion. That's good to see.
Yeah, that's what we're used. That's what we've seen before and we expect from
that. This isn't against a great defense, but it's good to see.
Oh yeah,
he's still throwing interceptions against defenses he shouldn't be. He had a bad pick early in the game, but he was able to kind of iron himself out and make smarter throws after that.
Mm-hmm.
The run game looked improved, but again, look at the opponent. They had 230 yards on the ground. Devois Whaley ran the ball 19 times for 119 yards and a score. Freshman Chase Hayden was able to punch it in twice, all around a good day. Red zone scoring continues to be a problem. It took the Razorbacks 8 plays and 2 New Mexico State penalties to score from inside the 5-yard line.
You can't do that. You just can't.
Yeah, which leads to the offensive line. In my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen a worse offensive line at Arkansas than this one. They're very bad. Allen was getting knocked down, after he let go of the ball constantly. And New Mexico State's front seven is nothing to write home about, Mitch. I fear for Austin Allen's life over the next few weeks.
Yeah, we talk about him making mistakes he shouldn't. It's probably because he's terrified.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On defense, the Hogs are still giving up big plays. New Mexico State was able to rack up 344 yards through the air, and wide receiver Jaleel Scott accounted for 174 of those yards in a score. The run defense looked great, however, allowing just 11 yards on the ground all day for New Mexico State. That's really good. McTelvin Agim, who they call Sosa, continues to be a great threat in the backfield, 2 solo tackles and a sack and a tackle for loss. Overall, Mitch, a win is a win. And this team needs wins, but there's still huge issues that need to be addressed before the Hogs head into that tough SEC slate, which begins in Columbia, South Carolina next week against the Gamecocks.
No doubt.
This game is a must-win for both these programs. I think we kind of talked about that. Arkansas needs this win for confidence down the stretch in the West, and after dropping that game to TCU, after dropping that game to Texas A&M, they just really need it moving forward. Vegas opened the lineup with South Carolina as a 2-point favorite, and I'll take that. This game's in Columbia, so the crowd will definitely play into it.
This is a big game for Bielema and Muschamp, I think, probably more than anybody. This game, I think both teams go into this game thinking they're going to, it's a must-win, a game they certainly probably both think they're going to win. So I think this game has pretty big coaching implications, low-key.
Absolutely. Well, it's a Will Muschamp defense the Hogs are going to be playing against, like you said. So we'll know they're going to play disciplined.
Yeah.
Will Muschamp defenses don't give up big pass plays, really, so Austin Allen might have some trouble finding receivers way downfield. On the other hand, back to the Gamecocks running game. It's not very good, which plays really right into the strength of this Arkansas defense. Top running back Rico Dowdle has carried the ball 45 times this season, but he's only averaged 2.8 yards per carry, Mitch.
Yeah, man.
That's not great.
It looks like his carries are going down as well, as I feel like he's all but been eclipsed.
Yeah. South Carolina's weapon at this point, like you said, is no doubt Jake Bentley. On the year so far, he's completed 62% of his passes for 6.7 yards a completion, and he's thrown 9 touchdowns, but he's also thrown 4 interceptions.
Yeah, this offense looks eerily similar to Vandy. But I agree. It does look like we have 2 just brutally bad offensive lines going up against each other. So
Yeah. Thank you for that segue because, like I said, neither team is any good at protecting the quarterback. Both Allen and Bentley took beatings in their game against Texas A&M, ironically enough. So we'll see. We'll see whose defense can inflict the most damage in this one.
Yeah, I think Arkansas now more than ever is missing Sam Pittman.
Oh God, don't even. You know what? That's your fault, man.
I did. I recruited him. I was like, hey, you should come to Athens.
Hey, it's Mitch. What's up, Sam? No,
we're good buddies.
Actually, to kind of help me make this pick here, I've got a little special guest with me I want to bring on real quick.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to bring on my little brother, Tate. He's a lifelong Hogs fan, and I kind of want to get his take on the game. Man, what do you think's going to happen? Right here into this mic.
I think Arkansas has this one. Bounce back, SEC play, get their first win. I think it'll be 24-10 Hogs.
24-10 Hogs. What makes you think that?
It always takes Bielema a couple games to get going, except for last year, but we'll not talk about that. But it always gets them a couple games to get going and for the defense to really get going. So I think this will be their bounce back game, really, and they'll have it rolling from here.
Hey, you can't deny the boys' confidence.
Yeah, if they come in and win by 2 scores, that would quiet a lot of doubters, at least.
It would quiet this negative Nancy, at least for one episode. Well, brother, I got to disagree with you. No doubt, in an alleged attempt to further anger my friends and family in Hog Nation, I'm going against the Razorbacks again this week. I think they fall to South Carolina on the road, 28-24. But I do think we get our first. First field goal of the year.
Hey, that's something. That'd be a win in its own right, honestly.
It would be something of a win, wouldn't it?
Didn't you say they don't have a special teams coach?
They do not have a special teams coach. You're correct about that.
That is just, that just is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. Well, special thanks to Tate for coming on and giving his prediction. Thank you, Tate.
Yeah, for real.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. All right. All right, well, real quick before we wrap up here, Mitch, let's get to who took the biggest L, why don't we?
Oh, yeah, why not? I love that this is a recurring segment.
I'm having a real good time watching y'all vote on this. I follow the poll all the time that it's up. I hope that all of you listeners out there are having a great time with this, too. We hope to continue it. We love picking losers.
It's what it's all about. The SEC is just as much about who dominates and when one team being the Tide dominant for so long, you have to entertain yourself.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get to the contestants here. We have the Tennessee Volunteers, who were nothing short of demolished by your beloved Georgia Bulldogs. We have Mississippi State, who got it taken to them on the plains by the Auburn Tigers. We have the Ole Miss Rebels, who is just RIP. And we have the LSU Tigers, who just lost to a Sunbelt team.
Yeah.
With 79% of the votes, that's a vast majority. Congratulations to the LSU Tigers.
Yep.
You've taken the biggest L, and I don't think anyone disagrees.
I think that's a good choice.
I agree. Thank you, listeners. You have my heart.
Yeah, again, I think it's a loss that is going to sting for a long time, but I think it's a wake-up call kind of loss that's definitely going to incite some change. But yeah, all those losses are pretty brutal, though.
Yeah, they are very brutal. I feel particularly bad about the Ole Miss one.
Yeah,
because that's a lot of points to get scored on you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about how good Bama is all we want, but the Vandy game and this game, I mean, getting blown out, there's no way you feel any shred of good about that.
Did they play Alabama's basketball team, or was that their?
They actually mixed the scores up. They put the Bama basketball score with the Ole Miss football score.
It happens.
Either way, I'm sure it would have been a win.
All right, man. Well, before we head out of here, you got any more closing thoughts on Week 5?
Just real quick, just going to run through the updated rankings. We got Bama, obviously, number 1 across the board. We got, although those Clemson votes, it's something to keep an eye on. We got Georgia 5th in the AP, 6th in the coaches. Auburn 12th in the AP, 13th in the coaches. And Florida 21 in the AP and 20 in the coaches, getting a little extra love. That's it. Everybody else is unranked. As far as conferences go, again, in the East, if I'm just talking conference play, Florida and Georgia are both undefeated. In the West, I think we got a little bit more to look at with A&M, Auburn, and Alabama all being 2-0 in the conference. These conference races, man, it's going to start being the sort of the center of everything we're talking about. We got a lot of teams that are 0-2. In the East right now in conference play with Tennessee, Vandy, and Missouri. So definitely the East starting to pull away. I think the West will start to see the same thing as time goes on. Anyway, man, we're in it. Stuff is happening.
We are fully in it. We're not quite to my favorite part of the college football season. That happens about Week 8. I'm very excited for that final 4-game stretch. I love that part. That's always my favorite part of the season.
Start getting those in-state rivalries.
Yeah, start getting to the real dark meat,
Yeah, oh yeah.
That old-fashioned hate. All right, man. Well, I agree with you on all your points there. I think, as time goes on, we're really going to start to see some separation, even if we haven't already seen separation.
Yeah, seriously. Also, last-minute shout-out. Kentucky is still in 3rd place in the East. I think that's important.
That's very important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have been listening to Ask the Bottle, an SEC Fancast. Never forget to write to us at askthebottlecast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, again, at our brand new handle, @bottlecast. You can tweet us any thoughts, any questions, any concerns, predictions you got for games. Always send them over. Thank you always for listening and subscribing to us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Please, all you darling listeners, go give us a rating on iTunes. We would love you.
Oh, yeah. Anything.
All right. My name is Clint Childers. That guy way over there is the Georgia Peach, Mitch Davis.
Yeah, guys, thank you again for tuning in. As you can tell, we're excited to be at this point in the season, and we cannot wait to see what happens next week.
Absolutely. We will see you all next week.